Hello, my fiery friends, the Infernoman here with the latest in budget deck technology. And for today's deck tech, we're going to be covering a slight twist on an old archetype, Mono Blue Tempo. However, we do have a couple other cards added to make it what I call Monsters Inc.
Put that thing back where it came from, or so help me. So help me, and cut.
But real quick, we're going to go over the stats of the deck. As you can see right here, we're running an average mana curve about 1.9. We're all in on just blue with only 12 creatures and 28 non-creature spells. Specifically, that's 28 instants in total with 20 lands. The total cost of the deck is actually pretty cheap, and I honestly think this is also as cheap as it gets for a blue deck out there. We're talking only 5 rares total in the entire deck, both sideboard and main deck, and actually it's pretty sweet also in paper if you actually want to purchase the deck. So what makes this deck now viable once more? Well, let's go over again the main card and why we're even looking at this deck today. Thing in the Ice is a horror creature that's a 0/4 and it costs 2 mana to cast. It also has Defender. Thing in the Ice enters the battlefield with 4 ice counters on it. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you remove 1 ice counter from Thing in the Ice. If it has no ice counters on it, you transform it into Awoken Horror, which becomes a Kraken Horror that's a 7/8, and it says when this creature transforms into Awoken Horror, return all non-horror creatures to their owner's hands. So in other words, think of the Ice as more of like a all one-sided pseudo wrath, if you will. I know it's not actually a real wrath, but this card can be devastating against go wide decks and other creature focused decks in the format. So that's why we're going to try to play this today, and it goes really well with our tempo plan. But first, let's explain, of course, the other creatures that are going to help support this whole game plan. In the 1-drop slot are 4 copies of Delver of Secrets. You've seen me play this before. Played this in the early game. We're going to hope we flip it over with one of our instants that it reveals on the next upkeep and make it a 3/2 to do some quick damage to our opponent. To help out in the 2-drop slot with Thing in the Ice, we also will use Ledger Shredder. Same thing, I've talked about this card many times before. It's amazing, it's very powerful, and it slowly gets more and more stronger as the game goes on if your opponent has no way to answer it. And then finally, if all of our other creatures fall apart, we have Tolarian Terror as well. Tolarian Terror, of course, will get cheaper to cast whenever we have more instant sorceries in our graveyard, and it also has built-in protection of Ward 2. So as you may have already figured out, we're basically going to try to ride out 1 or 2 of our main threats and hopefully just get to victory that way. Think of the Ice as, again, more of like a pseudo wrath. I've actually tried to run this with a full playset, and it didn't perform very well. So I think honestly for our build today, 2 copies is really all you need. But otherwise, the entire deck is just focused on just drawing a ton of cards or counterspelling to keep the tempo going. So we have Considers, we have, of course, Ops for drawing cards, we also have cards such as Frantic Inventory, and also Censor can be considered not only a counterspell, but you could cycle it away when you don't need it in the mid or late game. Otherwise, ways to protect our creatures from any kinds of damage that they may take is we have cards like CUC the Guard Approach, which is also an excellent tempo card because we can also tap a creature if we need to get a blocker out of the way. We have Spell Pierces, of course, as our counterspell. Slip Out the Back if we have to deal with any Wraths or Farewells that exile the board. We have Fading Hopes also to bounce away early creature threats, especially Mana Dorks, which also helps us scry and of course set up our next turn. But otherwise, that's really all the deck kind of does for you. It's not anything that's super groundbreaking or new. However, because of how it's designed, your opponents will be very annoyed if they don't have ways of removing our stuff. So the biggest tip I'm going to give you for this is make sure to plan out ahead of time when you want to play your creatures, and make sure you have the mana backed up to either protect it or counterspell away what your opponent might try to do to get rid of the threat. Otherwise, in terms of your lands, as simple as it can be, we have only 19 islands and a single copy of Mystic Sanctuary. If we need to in a pinch, Mystic Sanctuary helps us just bring back another Waterfall instance back to the top of our deck. Be very careful when you do this though, because that might throw you off if you're trying to also cast Tolarian Terror, so just keep that in mind, of course. Otherwise, your sideboard is going to be pretty much what you would expect. We have Witness Protections. This is just to get rid of any of the bigger threats that we just can't deal with either counter spells, or we just can't bully our way through with damage. We have Ether Gust against red and green decks. Test of Talons is mostly for combo decks out there, specifically Indomitable Creativity to get rid of those in pinch. We also have Mystical Disputes for enemy blue decks out there. Another single copy of Slip Out the Back. If we need to force through damage against chump blockers, we have Shadow Spear and can also turn off your opponent's Hexproof and Indestructible on their permanents. Soul Guide Lantern will be here as our typical graveyard hit and can help us draw a card if we absolutely need to. Negate will be here as your more catch-all counter spell. And finally, Ominous Seas. This card can help us just get a bunch of Krakens out as long as we keep drawing a bunch of cards, which this deck does a very good job of doing. honestly, that is basically it for the deck. Again, it is nothing any too groundbreaking. You've definitely all seen out there, I'm sure, some form of mono blue tempo, but this one's going to really lean into heavily getting our big creatures out to just get rid of everything else our opponent is trying to do and just overwhelm your opponent with some scary, monstrous threats. Does this version of mono blue tempo have what it takes to actually beat out our opponents? Well, only one way to find out. So you know what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and take the deck now into some matches and see how it performs. But before we continue, if you do like any of the content that I do, please like, follow, and subscribe wherever you watch the content so you don't miss out on any of the gameplay, booster pack openings, deck decks, and so much more. Okay, my fiery friends, here we go. We are playing our Monsters Inc. / mono blue tempo deck using Thing in the Ice, and we actually have it in hand, which is awesome. We have ways of drawing some cards so we can flip this hopefully quick, and let's see if this works. All right. Our opponent is already doing their mulliganing, which is fine. So we're hoping right now if we can get Thing in the Ice out, maybe our opponent will be a creature heavy deck and we can just take advantage of that. Okay, so they're playing something here. Hopefully it's elves. I would love to just kind of flip this on an elf deck. So we're going to hold off for a moment here. It's very tempting to put down Thing in the Ice, but I really need to know what our opponent is playing first. Abzan. Oh, are they the Greasefang deck? I guess we'll find out right now. Okay, so they're probably the Greasefang deck, everybody. So in that case, we really need to then turbo this out. But is it going to be enough? I have the Zika Chariot already, so let us cycle the sensor. On an island. Okay, so you see a guard approach is here. Thing in the Ice. Okay, so we might be able to flip this actually turn 3. So if they bring out Greasefang now, we actually can bounce it away with Feigning Hope, which is actually excellent. Okay, so here comes Greasefang. So for this, full control. We bounce Greasefang. One counter comes off of Thing in the Ice. We scry. We don't need the island. Put that back. Opponent goes swinging for some reason. I see they were like, just kidding. We could just block that for days. Okay. We draw another island, and we will put down that island. Let us opt. Okay, we'll take another opt. That's fine. Consider. Put away the island. We have plenty of lands now. Spell Pierce. Not too shabby. We'll keep that. And then we will pass the turn here. Here's the reason why. Our opponent right now could put down Greasefang, but we can bounce everything away. That's basically what we're trying to do with the deck. So let's see if we can pull it off. Tap land. Can't stray away. We want to let that resolve. We have a Spell Pierce right now. We actually could pull it off. We'll let that resolve. So I want our opponent to just do their thing real quick, and I'll show you again what this deck is trying to do. Do they turn it on? Come on, opponent. I know you want to. Come on. They grew it. So here's what you want the deck to do, everybody. So we will opt. This is what you want to do. This is exactly how it works. Yes, we got it. We got the flip. And we also got a Delver of Secrets. I'll take that. All right, so we actually now managed to pull off the Thing in the Ice here. So Delver of Secrets. Island. Now we go smashing. Take that, Greasefang. Okay, I'm feeling good right now. This is actually what you wanted the deck to do. So our opponent basically got reset their whole turn. Wow, when it flips, it's actually really sweet when it does. Satyr Wayfinder. They dump more cards into the yard. At least one of the cool things, at least about most of the people that play Abzan, is they don't want removal of the main deck, because usually this is the best of one where they're just trying to get their combo off. So this actually worked out in our favor perfectly. Witherbloom. Nope. We will Spell Pierce that. Good thing we kept those. Tap land. And we will pass. Do we flip? Yes, we flip. Okay, and we got our UC the Guardian Pros, everybody. This is what we do. Tap the creature. Get it out of the way. We swing. That's how you do it, everybody. Oh my goodness, that was perfect. That's what you want the deck to do. That was the dream, everybody. Oh man. That was awesome. Okay, my fiery friends, here we go. We are playing our mono blue tempo deck, which focuses a lot more on bigger creatures, aka Monsters Inc. And okay, so we do have a Delver's Secrets for the early game, and then we do have a lot of ways of drawing cards. Hopefully we'll draw into one of our bigger creatures. So let's keep this. Even though we don't have protection, I think we can ride out Delver's Secrets for a little bit. Gilded Goose. Okay, so are they some kind of sacrifice deck? Interesting. Either way, let's get that island down. We have another Delver's Secret, which is great. So this will allow us to force our way through Gilded Goose, as long as we can flip. Okay, we've got... Okay, so this is the Jund Sacrifice deck, everybody. Ooh, okay, yeah. We're going to see a lot of value coming out of their stuff. Let's see if it works. We don't have what we need, but that's okay, because Tolarian Terror is also pretty gnarly against our opponent. Let's put down our next Delver's Secrets. We will go swinging. And we pass the turn. The only tricky part right now is just figuring out, can we actually flip our Delvers? Opponent's going to have another Anvil down. So let's go ahead and see. Can we get lucky here? Can we get lucky? What do we got? All right. We reveal. And all right, not too bad. We both got them flipped. So we are looking pretty good. Go swinging. No blocks? Okay. That's okay. I'm fine with this. We haven't had a chance to really get any more lands to start making this Tolarian Terror shrink, but that's also okay because I have no idea what our opponent is going to try to do here. And we need to keep up that mana for the Censor. Wow, 3 Anvils. Okay. Let's see. Is that going to help out our opponents? I'm guessing they make a food here. Yep, they do. And they were probably going to sack it to then create a bunch of little tokens. Yep, no surprise there. That's a lot of tokens, and that does mean they now have a clock against us. But again, we're going to try to find a way to get through this. So let's consider. Throw away the Censor. See how fast we can flip this Tolarian Terror. Ooh, we got Thing in the Ice too. We will have to pass for a moment here. Let's cycle the Censor. Okay, we got a land, which is great. Island. Thing in the Ice. So we've got all of our creatures, so we can start doing some stuff, but let's see. Can we close out this game quick enough here against our opponent? Our flyers would definitely put a clock against our opponent. Actually, I don't even think we need the Thing in the Ice anymore. Trail of Crumbs. Makes a food. Deadly Disputes. Okay. That's a lot of tokens. Can we stop this in time? Well, hopefully, again, if we could flip Thing of the Ice, this might give us a major advantage here. Cauldron Familiar. Oh, boy. Well, it's time for Cat Oven shenanigans. But this time, I think we can get there. I think we can get there, everyone. Okay, so here's how we do this, everybody. This is the turn. This is where we got to make the magic happen. Okay. Spell Pierce to the bottom. We don't need that. Fading Hope. That's great. We can keep that. Let us opt. Put away the island. We can then consider. We will put... Well, actually, we'll keep the island there. Okay, so this is how we do it, everybody. We have now in place everything we need. It's tempting right now to blow away everything, but they can still sack some stuff and create some blockers. So we will swing with our 2 flyers. And we have to time it now where we can get this Thing of the Ice to flip. That's the plan. Binding of the Old Gods. Targeting. That's actually fine. Actually, how do we do this? Okay. We'll let that go, actually. Cauldron Familiar again. Okay, so everything's out on the field. Loading Cult Anvil. This is what I was waiting for, everybody. Okay. They make a bunch of tokens, but they're about to see right now. They're going to get the flip. Okay, so let's slip out the back. Okay. There we go. Everything bounces away. And there you go, everybody. That was it. That's the plan. So, and there you go, everybody. We did it. Yes, we did it. Thing in the Ice flips again. I love this card. Oh, that was great. That worked out perfectly. Beautiful, everybody. And there you have it, everybody. So that was our Monsters Inc. deck, a slight twist on Mono Blue Temple. And I'll be honest with you, I was actually really happy with how this deck turned out. So basically, as you saw from the couple matches, we actually are pretty flexible. If we can get our early game threat out like Delver of Secrets, it does the damage that you usually expect from it. But we are also versatile in the mid game and late game thanks to that Ledger Shredder, that Thing of the Ice, and Tolarian Terror. So I'm feeling pretty high about this deck right now. It is very tempting to get an entire playset of Thing of the Ice just to get that satisfying feeling of a flip. And while we did pull off the flip, just keep in mind that it's still a slow type of Wrath, even slower sometimes than an actual regular Wrath. So keep that in mind if you do want it. I still recommend only 2 copies is really all you need. If you really want to lean into any other creature, get more Ledger Shredders. I can't stress that enough just because, again, Ledger Shredder just has more flexibility. Yes, it is a little slower to build up in terms of power, but its versatility just comes from the fact that it just filters through your deck to get you exactly what you need when you need it. Now, if you are interested in an upgrade to the deck, here's what I would recommend personally. Something that actually I didn't even build myself. This actually comes from another YouTuber by the name of MTG Joe. Definitely check out his content too. I do love his stuff. I admire what he does. He definitely focuses a little bit more on the competitive side, which is something we don't do on this channel, but it's a nice way if you're interested in something that gets a little bit more serious with decks. Otherwise, in terms of how this deck goes now, by going into red, we now have access to a lot of removal that, well, the blue version of the deck on a budget kind of lacks. But that's also the advantage, of course, with going all out. So you have access now to Fiery Impulse, Obliterating Bolt, you have Brotherhood's End as our Wrath, you have Fires of Victory that can also not only do some damage in an unconventional kind of way, but it also helps us draw a card if you are willing to kick it. So actually it's pretty sweet in a pinch. We also have Chandra's Torch of Defiance as an excellent planeswalker that also gives us everything we need in this deck. We have Brazen Borrower as a great tempo style card. Going into Divide by Zero gives us now access to a completely different way we look at our deck in the sideboard. So of course that means we're now going to have a lesson and learn package. Most of it is pretty much what you've seen before, so it should come as no surprise. If you are interested, of course, in a best of 3 version of this deck, then definitely you might want to just jam in the extra remaining 8 slots some more counter spells and a little bit more removal. Otherwise, we want to ideally try to cast, if we can't do our Thing in the Ice, Shark Typhoon is great if we can hard cast it to get the maximum amount of value out of it, and a single copy of Bedlam Reveler. This is actually a really awesome card. Once we dump our entire hand, we can help refuel our hand with some extra card draw. Otherwise, the land base is going to be mostly all the rares that you can spare, so of course you'll get your copies of Hall of the Storm Giants. You have Otawara, of course, Den of the Bugbear, Sokazin. You will have, of course, your staples in terms of your dual lands. And yes, it may look a little awkward to have the Triomes here, but hear me out for a moment. I can see what Joe was trying to do here. They're great for cycling, and they are good in the early game when we definitely need to make sure we get all the essential mana we need for casting our spells. Because remember, we are a tempo deck, so we definitely want to make sure we have everything we need in the mid to late game. And finally, that single copy of Field of Ruin to take care of enemy lands that are pesky against us. But otherwise, you tell me in the comments below, what do you think? Are you a fan of Thing of the Ice from Shadows over Innistrad? Are you actually a fan of tempo style decks in general? Or do you just like making people feel miserable by playing counter spells after counter spells that gets your opponent so annoyed that they just kind of just rage quit out of the match? Let me know in the comments below, and I would love to hear from you. Don't worry though, we are going to try to look at a couple more cards that I do like from Shadows over Innistrad Remastered in the hopes of maybe putting together some more fun decks out there. But definitely, as of the posting of this video, we are around the corner also from getting our next set of previews from the upcoming set, March of the Machines, coming to Standard soon. So be sure to check that out. And again, if you're interested in certain cards that you do see from those previews that you want to see me put together in a deck, whether it's in Explore, Historic, or maybe even Brawl, let me know. Again, I would definitely like to try some new stuff out there. But my only other final thought I'm going to say is, if you are a fan of these styles of decks where you kind of just tempo play your opponent and are more reactive to their style of gameplay, I assure you, whether you manage to flip Thing of the Ice, whether you overwhelm them with blue counter spells, or just somehow make them rage quit because how annoying this deck can be, I assure you, you will not be disappointed. That's all I have for you today. Thanks again for watching, everyone. And just remember that no matter what you do play in the game of life, always be sure to burn bright. Later.